Oh yeah, 3/6, 2023, and this is the beginning of the week. I hope you've had a terrific weekend. There's been a lot of things happen down. I know WitchCon happened. A lot of events happened over the weekend, and the internet and the world is coming alive as we're facing in the northern hemisphere the first inklings of spring. Isn't that terrific? So we're going to do that. But in this time of change, things change all the time, and we've talked a lot about Lord Don and his thing. And this today we're going to talk to now the officially first priest, most Reverend, and I can't believe I'm saying this, most Reverend Phoenix Coffin-Williams at this time, but I am so fantastic. I've known Phoenix since he was a boy, teenager, a man. You were already a man when I was a teenager, but hi, how you doing there, most Reverend? But we're going to just call you Phoenix tonight. Um, it must be quite an experience for you because the story is that you started at witch school at like 13. Can you tell
Uh,
us a little bit? Tell us your story.
yeah, so it's really, really surreal. Extremely surreal. I did get my start in witch school. My origin involves using Yahoo groups, Yahoo Messenger to communicate with folks. Using Instant Messenger to, do my witch school studies with Alyssa, who is the first elder now, with Lady Elizabeth, who is an archpriestess now. And I started off forming like these really cute, sweet online relationships with people, which at the time it didn't seem like such an act of perfect love and perfect trust. But knowing what I know about the internet now, how lucky I am to have actually stumbled across legitimate friends in those two really is something that like set the stage for why I continue to look at the tradition, why I continue to research the tradition's values and the approach to clergyhood and the clergy making process. Um, so that's kind of like the early part, right? To picture 13-year-old kid, parents are, lenient enough to allow him to have a computer in his own bedroom at age 13, early 2000s. Um, Doing lessons by night once everyone else has gone to bed, turning on my computer. No one's going to interrupt the dial-up connection into the school. So I could have as much time as I wanted to study, take notes, do all the things that I had to do while I was, trying to participate in outer court and move into inner court programming at the school. I got my first degree initiation right in the middle of my second semester of my freshman year of undergrad. So had to be a grown up to become a member of the clergy. And so between high school studies and making sure that my grades were legit and I was a good citizen and could, make my family proud education wise, and then also the hustle and bustle of applying to college and making sure that, I'm off to a great start on that front. I was finally able to get my first degree initiation while I was in undergrad freshman year. And interestingly enough, my mentor at the time lived an hour and maybe like 10 minutes away in a city of Rochester, New York. So I had that mentor. We never actually met, but she had a great recommendation for me, and I was allowed into the the inner court at the first degree clergyhood. Moved on to the second degree. Beloved Lady Wendy LaJoy, an ancestor now, was my second degree mentor. She was the first elder for a great while. Um, uh, I think she was in between you, right, sir? So
Yeah.
she was my second degree mentor. And I really did enjoy that, continue to build connections and relationships with other people in the school, but not just the school now, but also in the church. And so there was some dual roles and overlapping relationships, learning how to um, live in a culture that was international, that was virtual, and that was in person became
Hmm.
a part of that journey. And understanding what it meant to be a global citizen, because the internet was really making, or is still making, the world a whole lot smaller. This issue of globalization is something that is confronted in the tradition, right? And we do that phenomenally by having our temples all over the place. Um, but with the internet making, the world a lot smaller, and increasing individual visibility, like being a global citizen became a huge part of what I wanted to master in my second degree studies. And so I did that, was successful there, and I got done with my second degree studies um, shortly before I graduated with my bachelor's degree in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that in 2012. I have the certificate somewhere around here. But
Yeah.
I graduated undergrad in 2012. My second degree initiation was somewhere in there. Um, Successful. Moved on to the high clergyhood training. Continuing to build relationships. Starting to get brave and put myself out there as far as how I interpret the teachings and how I apply them in my ministry as someone who is in graduate school now, someone who is providing therapy services, someone who is now trying to impact a community on purpose. Became like the focus of my high clergy studies. Was successful there and met Reverend Don, Reverend and Reverend Elizabeth for of my third degree elevation at Witchfest USA. Shortly after that third degree elevation, I completed my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. Complete, done, signed, sealed, delivered. And those two things I think are like twin experiences. I think getting my high priesthood initiation and completing my master's degree are things that like were spirit contracts that I needed to do for this life, as far as this incarnation. And so from there, I was able to build a ministry that dovetailed psychology, mental health counseling, research into trauma, research into privilege, research into the various isms that we label under, and how to heal from those, the use of magical techniques to heal from various things that are classified as disorders. Um, and so I entered a PhD program because I wanted to discuss, make parallels, and help magical clergy members recognize the power in the things that we use to heal and recover from what happens to us, in life. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm hoping to wrap up this PhD by May. But the way that my education has coincided with my ministry, I think is an overarching theme of my development. And as I, kind of like wrap up this chapter and enter into the office of the first priesthood, I want to make maybe my theological, my ministerial statement be that of um, emancipation theology, which is, those of us who have the ability to do so need to empower other people to seek their personal freedom and agency.
That's wow. That is quite the story. Yeah, the parallels of education. So, real quick, we're going to say hi, Reverend Michael and Casanos. They're all saying you wish you well. Bradley Fosterberry, yeah. Hi, Arlene. Cosmo, yeah, we always that. 93, Arlene, yeah. She's very glad to be her second degree mentor. Reverend Michael again, Arlene again, Mary Hawk, of course, and Diane DeMari, great. Oh, there's sound. And just refresh it has started already. Okay, great. So everybody's out there. We always have people enjoying us. And you talk about being global citizens. This is one of those opportunities. And hey, Rob, that we are able to interact on a very personal level. When we first started, we were using Yahoo groups and not one Yahoo one list, even and e groups. And we had our own chat rooms. We built a lot of things on the cutting edge. And one of the things that you talk about global citizens, you've been really one of the people who have really participated in the constant re-edging of what we would do, the witchcraft and magic and how the internet works. Every time we made a change, you've been really there along with a lot of really great people on there. But I'm going to take this in a little different tack. We kind of know your backstory. So this was this whole last 2 weeks have been like a really since February 11th have been a surprise. both good and bad. Can you talk about how it's impacted you? I mean, other than becoming first priest, which we talked about, because that was not in the cards like at the beginning of the year, you know. Um,
Uh, for a while, I had regarded um, talking about succession as kind of like disrespectful because I was not
hmm
going to think about the future of a tradition that didn't have
hmm
Reverend Don a part of it, you know, being a leader.
hmm
However, we all have to live life on life's terms. And so that means
hmm
that we gotta practice the radical acceptance of the things that we are not meant to control at the moment. So that has been a huge exercise over the past week. Um, Coming to terms with mortality and the fact that like this really is a temporary thing that we got going right here this incarnation. Sure, as Correllians, you know, we believe that at some point we can determine our next incarnation and do that on purpose, you know, but still this right here, this incarnation that we have is a temporary kind of thing. And thinking about using it to the best of our ability or making sure that we have a rich, full, and meaningful life is something that I've been reflecting on over the past 2 weeks and making sure that I can help as many people as possible also have that through spiritual means. And you know, helping people find validation in the stuff that they believe in and the stuff that rings true for their spirit is absolutely important to me. And I've come to that a bunch of times as I've been like meditating and journaling and reflecting.
It was very interesting because we were at Brushwood last year,
Hmm.
and I remember bringing this up. Is that I wanted you to start thinking in that direction. I remember saying, you know, that I was beginning a succession list, as was my job at the time. Um, as yeah, you were mentioning earlier, Wendy was the first elder for a while, and then when she passed, I took it back up for a little while, and then of course everybody knows what happened next. I waited around a little bit, and Lady Alyssa was so gracious of taking that. That was like 2.5 years ago, and I remember at Brushwood, we were just talking a little bit, and I remember how reluctant you were about to talk about it, and it was something that you had to think about because you thought, well, maybe sometime in the future, but it was not like it in your mind.
Mm-mm.
Um, but you can accept it. And you said something, and you said it again when you accepted, is that wherever spirit led you, that you would accept. And
Hmm.
so we came here. That for me, that was always on my mind. This idea of success, you know, because I built. That's what I do.
Hmm.
And I'd rather not be first priest myself. So there we go. And so we're very fortunate. We're both. It was a difficult time for Lord Don to go through, but it was also very lucky for me, at least, that we were able to, that he's still here with us, and that he's able to step back after 44 years. He feels very comfortable stepping back. And what is he going to do? He's going to do some writing. He's got a lot of art. He just brought out a great omnibus. You know, bring out some new art. He's got some projects, and so having someone younger, is definitely younger. You're what? Somewhere in the 30s. And people go, well, isn't he so young? And I will say this right out. No, Don was it. I mean, we have a really, you know, people are used to older members in the traditions and taking over, but really the younger people are the ones who the Correllians have always been a younger base group. I mean, look, when I started to actually work, I was like 30 when I went to Parliament. So that idea of being younger, but it must be kind of. So let me go ahead and ask this. But being a younger person to reach what we would call such a high rank, it was literally critical. I mean, there's like nowhere else for you to go. This is literally it. And to be in charge of something like that, and charge is the wrong word. I should watch my language. I'm so used to. I'm trying to
Hmm.
deal with it. To lead, to be an example, to kind of be a guide of is really the better way of saying
Big
it.
thing to be responsible to maintain.
hmm So can you talk a little bit about how that feels? I know it's kind of surreal, but you know that sort of idea because you've been doing this for a while. I mean, you've been a right reverend for a while. You've done holistic knowledge. You've done a number of illustrations. So this isn't out of like the blue, like oh, picked out of the crowd, like that. You've been doing a lot of the work. You've done a lot of the work. You've done a lot of ancestor worship, and you can see him every Wednesday on Millennial Magician. Uh, so you've been doing the work. So let's not be let's not make this out like it's like a lottery or something. You really did work hard. This was not an accident that you're in this position.
Mhm.
So can you talk about how that that work and the idea of what you're there?
Yeah, so all of it is a collaboration between myself and my spirit guides, ancestors, higher self, and the community that I want to be a part of. Early on, I was given the advice that I have to make all of this as deep and as meaningful as possible in order for it to actually reflect, what's on my spirit. So addressing the needs of the community is something that I've always been passionate about. Seeing people who are invisible or who are even more marginalized than I am is like a huge part of it. And you can build a ministry around following that passion, and it can be remarkably rewarding. And then people accidentally notice that you're doing something. So doing the thing that I was passionate about first was actually the opportunity that helped maybe Reverend Don, helped you, anyone else like recognize. All right, like someone's out here like doing the work. I don't know how the word got out or like how y'all realized it, but somehow someone like started looking at me and saw what I was doing, and it was all stuff that I absolutely wanted to do. None of the things were things that people had to twist my arm to do. It was all stuff that I used my own agency for, and I think that that makes it all the better. Is that I'm allowed to do something that I'm passionate about. Now I'm encouraged to do something I'm passionate about and spread it out so that many people can either get the benefits, learn how to think about what they want to do or what they're passionate about, or recognize that there's not as many constraints on us as we might think based on our social environment, based on classism, or what have you. So
Yeah.
making a commitment to like my own passion is really kind of, and then also making sure that I don't mess up my relationship. Essential, and making sure that people around me while I'm managing my passions is also a thing that I've had to grow into.
And I can understand that. I mean, I'm a big passion about building. People have always said, "Well, you get stuck in these offices," and I rarely stick too long in some of these higher offices. And people always ask me why, because well, my passion is in building. I like to coach. I like to talk. I like to build things. I like to do video. But I've always said that I always look for people, and I found, and you're one of them. Absolutely, I want to say this: that are better at being the counselor and that being a counselor, being a teacher, being that sort of thing. If people ask me, and you've received some of it, I'm more of a cattle prod at times. I'm a pusher of people, and that sort of thing. But you really felt into it. But Apu is saying, I think it's Apu. He's asking, what about what about the issues of racism in America? Is this an issue for you? I mean, was that a consideration?
You have come to the right person. So, like,
Hmm.
maybe some of y'all don't know, but I'm a part of the Order of Ebony Knights, which is a
Hmm.
Correllian Tradition order that's basically meant to combat racism. Racism in America is constantly something that I have to contend with because no matter what title I put on, I can't take off my black skin.
Hmm.
A real thing. Um, so being placed in this position, having this platform, you can definitely guarantee you can take it to the bank that you will hear me talk about this issue openly from this platform as a way of drawing attention to the fact that the way that we want equity for maybe people who are pagan or witches in a world that maybe wants to believe it's Christian, people of color, black people want a type of equity that places them as eye to eye citizens with other people in this nation. And so I'm going to ask for that on every level. I'm going to ask for it socially. I'm going to ask for it economically. I'm going to ask for it in personal relationships for love. I'm going to ask for it so people can be free to rear their children in a way that's consistent with their culture and beliefs. All of that is definitely important to me. And I will say that completely proudly, like for real, right here. So, like, y'all all know, like, y'all gonna hear about it. If you've been friends with me on Facebook, like you see the stuff that I
Hmm.
post. And I'm very serious. We can have a conversation about what I mean. We don't have to assume tone on social media posts or whatever. I can be directly engaged about it, and education can be provided. It is important to me, and like y'all have not heard the last of that. Thank you, Apu.
Yeah, and so yeah, and I think that's kind of interesting to me because nominally you would see. So let me go ahead and talk about it. There's a lot of story of Correllian having a deal with oppression. The first female ancestors went through being Indian women who every generation married white men because they were afraid of what could happen to them, and they were able to keep their faith, which is what we're sharing in today, to this type of way. I believe our chancellor has Spanish blood. I may know that Lord Don has a very small amount, but he has this sort of ancestral history of oppression. There's a lot of people don't realize Correllianism. Even myself, at 18 years old, found that I was of Jewish descent as well as the deeply American racist. Everybody saw the story. If you ever want to hear my story, check out Father D's Revelations, and I really go into my childhood very openly about it. But there was that. We have, a lot of people out there with is this sort of idea of this sort of idea of being multicultural. Plus, we have all sorts of people from all over the place. We've dealt with it, and so let me ask you about that because most people think of Wicca and witchcraft as basically all European. That and what makes it for you the Correllian tradition work for you in that sense of against the idea of what everybody sees as a white culture. Hmm?
Mhm.
So we're talking about.
Absolutely. I love this specific conversation.
Mm-hmm.
For certain, we can classify Wicca as a religion or a philosophy as something that has its origins in indigenous Europe, for sure. However, that is not the only place that that concept is, right? Other cultures, other societies, from a pluralistic perspective, have a clergyhood, have
Mm-hmm.
a training, have morals and values, and have ways of interacting with the community. So, in my head, this is how it kind of works. The Wicca, the wise people, G, um, that in Europe. Let's say that in the 21st century, in 2023, the class of people from Europe likely have communications with that class of people in Asia, that class of people in Australia, that class of people in South America, Africa, North America, so on and so forth. And so, what this means is there's a class or group of people who are clergy. We have the similar functions. We have training that makes us specialists, and we all know how to do what we do. And when it comes to a meeting of the minds, let's say all the wise people want to meet, then we can all meet and have a great conversation about the various ways that we meet life's conditions from a spiritual perspective.
And you're going to have it's interesting because in a little less than 6 months, we're going to be before a organization, a gathering, probably the largest in the history of the world. This next one called the World Parliament of World's Religions, where you're going to be reflecting and being one of the younger leaders. Being a leader amongst world leaders. I mean, people ask you, so that must be unusual a little bit because when Witchell started out, when we started out, all of us in that tradition, we were growing. We were growing bits and pieces, and all of a sudden, today we are now and recognized in 2008 as a global leadership. You're not just an American leader; you're representing a global community that recognizes itself. We have South Africans, Ray Packery. We have Pooh's out in the Philippines. We have lots of Europeans. We have while we're still a dominantly American tradition, we there's no way you can say it. We actually have our works being translated Greek. We have temples in Greece. So it must be very unusual. You talk about that global citizenry, and we're really just on the cusp of it. I mean, we're just starting that. I mean, we've been at it for a decade, maybe. 99 is where we got really started. But can you talk about that challenge? Because that's going to be unique, I think, to your generation, far
Mhm.
more so than mine. Hmm?
The challenge that I am anticipating and that I would
Hmm.
want to resolve is the ability for folks to actually be in each other's company on maybe even a rotating basis. I
Hmm.
would love to see a global lustration that does have some international folks a part of it. Like, I would love for them to be able to come here. I would love for us to be able to, have some lustrations in other parts of the world as well, where we can make a way to converge on these places. Um, try that food, see that culture, see that society, and really kind of put ourselves in other people's communities, um, and see how they manifest their ministries, in their home environment. I think that that's a powerful thing for leaders to be able to see. This is how your folks actualize what you've instilled in them. And I think it would be validating for the folks who don't have regular interaction, because of distance, right? Like, not everyone from Greece is going to be able to meet Reverend Don, or in real life, or Reverend Seth in real life. I want to make as many opportunities for that as possible moving forward, to add a tangible level of participation in the grand family.
And we have actually, so to that fact, we've utilized the internet. We've had the international rituals. We've only had so far two illustrations out of the country, one in London and one in Cape Town.
Hmm.
We've experimented with that. We do know we're talking with Apu for 2025 to be in the Philippines. Actually, most people don't know it. I was supposed to be in the Philippines in 2021. We were going to do that then, but then COVID hit. So that's being talked. We're bringing some people into the United States. But let me go ahead with I've got two major, I think, important questions. You talk about you coming in and so many people coming in. A lot of the leadership right now, and virtually all, I think every officer of currently of the Correllian tradition got generated through a combination of this internet culture and then be able to move it to live. What are you seeing you to reach this next generation, which seems to be growing, but is saturated with so much information, against a tradition? I mean, one thing that we were very fortunate, we were active and there weren't a lot of other ways for teenagers to move in. We were one of the few groups that were willing to see teenagers as the thing. Today, teenagers get saturated. But what do you see for bringing that generation into a more what we would call a traditional, or our tradition, the more traditional system?
As always, we have to meet people where they are at. So if
Hmm.
they're going to the social media platforms, if they're going the audience, so if the audience is younger people, where are they going? And we have
Hmm.
to place ourselves there, and we can't be afraid to talk to them, and we can't be afraid to hear what they have to say or what their observations are. I think if we can get them to recognize that participating in the tradition does offer them a platform to make their voice, their perspective, their vision known. And it also gives them legs and resources to, make an issue that's really important to them something that they really serve with their lives. And seeing it as an opportunity and not necessarily something that has to happen for legitimacy. Seeing participation in a group as something that is ultimately of benefit, that has a return on the investment, is also going to be, important. And then we also have to let people know that we as a group do not participate in things that hurt individuals who want to be a part of us. Right? We want to let people know that if they come here with their faith, if they come here with their ambition, if they come here with their talents, we are not going to abuse that for our gain only, that they can expect to see some achievement and some success by participating as well.
And I hope so too. That's always been one of the goals out there. And you're a great example of this. And I know there are others, but tonight it's your night. Hi, Ellie from Ireland, and Jim Sayers have been really for participating. Um, I do think I'm a big believer that leadership, where your leadership comes from or your ability to help, has to come out from your heart. And no, if anyone says, "Oh, you all have to be clergy," you are very good. Uh, you've been a great ritualist. I think you're one of the best ritualists I know. Plus, you do a lot of ancestor worship. Hmm?
Mhm,
There are
sure
other
do.
and there are other people who have practice. For me, that's never been everybody who knows me. They know I stand with the camera for a reason because I like to take it. But inside everything that has happened, there's all sorts of positions. And now you don't have to be just this one thing. I mean, the fact that you're a great ritualist, I think it's important that you can cast great spells is important. I'm a chaos magician. Everybody knows I love to play with the technomancies. But there's room for me inside there. There's room for everybody inside there. So I guess my question for you is now that you've reached here, I mean, people are going to be looking at it and they're going to go, well, it's going to be interesting because you're an example, I guess, of how diversity works. Not true diversity. There's never been a moment that you were given special treatment. This is you really worked hard. No one's ever been in our tradition because we have really good rules, and nobody ever gets. There's nobody there. No one can ever say, "Oh, because of this or that, that you got it." In fact, if you work too hard in our tradition, we kind of pick on you and make you work harder than the rest. Um, yes, Lori, I hear you. But and that people can take leadership. So that's an important part of the future. Do you think that because we're now facing so people? So let me go ahead and finish this question because I feel a lot of people right now. What I'm hearing a lot of return of, and I think at a particularly vulnerable time in America, you're hearing about a lot the rise of the right. We have the pastor out of Tennessee. We have so many Dominionist style people. Armageddon is a crime. Everybody hears me say that it is. The idea of Armageddon, the idea that we have to end in a genocide, is a crime. But this idea of end times, the idea that Christianity should be in rulership, we want to move that. It makes it for a lot of people, especially younger people, like feel uncomfortable with the idea of exerting that stuff. Can you talk about that? Because you just put yourself on the firing line if there in that aspect.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Christian dominionism,
Mm-hmm.
problematic. It's a very extreme ideology
Mm-hmm.
that it's not only patriarchal,
Mm-hmm.
but it is damaging because it removes our ability to be individuals. It removes
Mm-hmm.
our ability to think for ourselves and evaluate the materials that we are consuming based on our own values and the experiences that we have, being alive. So fundamentally, it's very hurtful to the individual, or to anyone or any people who form a group that doesn't fit into that paradigm or follow those belief systems.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of work to be done. As it is. So this is my last question. It's probably an unfair question because you're just like days into this. But do you have any sort of goals and aspirations now that you've achieved this, especially so quickly? I know that was not really expected. Actually, we thought this was 10 years from now. I thought you'd have a few more gray hairs when this came. Um, but is it? But do you have any goals or do you have any aspirations in this that you now that you can look at on the next level?
Goal number one, I don't want to set anything on fire or burn anything down. So maintaining what the ancestors and Reverend Don and Reverend Crystal have built up to this point and being a good ally and partner to Lady Stephanie is my first priority, before I try to saturate the position with any goal that I might have. The blue door, however, is an important passion of mine. And I would love to be able to advance the idea of, pagan pastoral counselors and clergy as a profession, participating in treatment teams, working in hospitals, working in community-based organizations, providing, healing to people using magical skills and technologies is something that I do want to be remembered for. And making a way for folks to participate in that kind of way. My response to over medication, my response to the pharmaceutical industry, and my response to the moral majority on what it means to live with mental health and be completely misunderstood. I would love to be remembered for that.
That's wonderful. I guess that's all. So, in the tradition of the show, the Daily Spell, I'm going to ask you to do a favor. I would like to end this with a small, if you would give us a small prayer. Oh, but let's go ahead and finish this. There you go. Mary Hawkins said, I love the idea of professional pastoral counselors. And I think the last couple of weeks have really shown that I could have used some of that help personally. I've gotten triggered, so people don't know. I'm a pretty rational human being. I'm actually known for my thing, and this whole event has unglued me for a while. I'm only starting to get my perspective back, and I'm very grateful that everybody's there. But as we do today, so we end in a prayer. Would you like to offer us one today?
Yes, yes. Whew. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, most sacred and beloved ancestors, I call upon you to descend upon us and move through our spirits and inform us of our highest wills, our most spectacular goods. I call down your abundance and your nurturing. I ask that you move through us and remove our anxieties and our doubts and our fears and fill us only with the knowledge of your presence in our spirits. So mote it be.
And with that, folks, we'll be back tomorrow. Where we'll be talking to Most Reverend Stephanie Neal. Mary Hawk will be interviewing her, our new chancellor. So you get your first introduction to that. Wednesday, we have a very special announcement. And Thursday, we have a special coming up from KC Metaphysical. We're going to come live from the floor of there with a expanded Tarot Thursday. Thank you, Most Reverend Phoenix, and congratulations. And the work is just beginning. So, blessed be everybody. And remember, this is Pagan World TV. Keep watching, and we'll keep bringing you the very best